have a quick question. I noticed most of your poetry doesn't end with a period. Most of your poetry is left as if there's more to say. Is that your purpose?
Yes, the space between stanzas. You're talking especially about the last word of a stanza. I have no punctuation after that last word. The space between stanzas serves as the punctuation. That happens to be a habit of mine. Let's say a signature. But you may also, Carol, be referring to the long sentences that are really a series of sentences, but there's no terminal punctuation. You have clause upon clause, and one of the reviewers on the back cover of Find What Isn't Missing refers to that. My attempt there is, through this clause upon clause of progression, to increase the energy, the momentum of the poem.
And it does that quite well, successfully. Thank you.
I have a question. And hi, Len. About your introduction and your first poem, it seems that most of the poetry journals, literary journals, are controlled by MFA graduates or English graduates. And in that sense, they control who actually reads what gets published.
Yes.
And also thinking about your first poem, where I assume your mother felt restricted living in the community of Yarrow. And I think your cousin Harvey Neufeldt wrote a paper on creating a brotherhood and how the Mennonite Brethren Church, the brotherhood, controlled what was acceptable in Yarrow. So I'm trying to relate those two. I just wanted you to comment on that.
You're right about only certain kinds of poetry appearing in literary journals and magazines. There are very few noted journals and magazines that are not like that. As I mentioned at the outset, I'm very pleased to see those restrictions surpassed, gone far beyond by poetry in general, especially today. There is this, this connection between how some of us grew up and the what you might call a kind of censorship, outside censorship and inner censorship in the small ethnic communities. Yes, a good observation. Thank you, Elmer. I saw Sandy's hand up, Sandra Goodhart, my good friend.
Hi, Leonard. Wonderful hearing your voice read your poetry. I guess the one question that came up for me was, how do you know when your poem is over? How do you know when you're done with a poem?
When the impulse to stop revising because you think you're beginning to spoil it, I would say right at that point. I am someone who revises and revises and revises. I write the first draft quite quickly, and then I work on the poem. And the long poems require a lot of work and rework and rework. But when I discover that I'm not helping the poem anymore by revising, that it ends in a way that possesses me, then I stop. It's a personal call. But I'll tell you what, Sandy, the ending is important.
Yeah.
There are a lot of poems out there that are very strong poems, but that grow a little slack at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no other, okay, sorry, Weldon.
Yes, thank you so much, Len. It's so good to hear you and to be on with you. I'm struck by the role that significant people play in your poetry, and am especially struck by the one on Bob Simon. And I'm wondering if you would say a bit more about your relationship and the inspiration for that poem.
I'm going to ask my daughter Sandra to repeat that because I couldn't catch everything. It was breaking up a bit.
That's okay. I couldn't either. So
Oh.
could you
Oh,
actually?
okay, let me see if I can say it louder or
More clearly.
see if, okay, now can you hear better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm struck by the role people play
He's struck by the
in your people, in your poetry that impact you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm especially taken with the Bob Simon one, the tribute to Bob Simon. And I'm wondering if you would say more about your relationship and the inspiration for that poem about Bob Simon.
Poem,
Yes, thank you.
I was planning to email him, and I started thinking about the content of the email. I knew he was back in New York, and when I was cogitating about the email, I got the news that he died in a crash. He was at the height of his career. What hurt me is that he was such an unpretentious, eloquent, extraordinarily eloquent, straightforward guy. When I told him that I had never taken a class in creative writing, I simply developed my writing alongside my scholarship, wishing that I had more time for the creative writing because I enjoyed that work more than the scholarly work, although I did not dislike the scholarly work. In any case, I told him I had not taken courses in creative writing, and he said, and I never went to journalism school. We really hit it off after that. I could not believe that the subsequent broadcasts of 60 Minutes featuring him would show him there alive, although he was gone. It was that sense of grief that got me started on that poem. And I must say part of the inspiration for the poem was his comment about acquaintances and friends and not getting to wash your hair every day, and nothing is sure.
Okay, so Leonard, would you like to finish off by reading from Nearness?
I will.
Thank
This is
you.
from Nearness, as Carol already mentioned previously. I'll start with a nature poem. There's a lot of nature poetry in Nearness. This one is titled Southward. No need to ask what the sundogs mean. The notes begin out of the wind-frozen stream and snow running in a burst over the charcoal ruffle of the spruce grouse and the marmot's quick look left and right. Leafless willows mark the way to the end of the sky's immensity, to where what's below rises up. Sprouts from inside the earth, pools of black in the hoof print, last year's grass splayed into fold lines of giving way to green. Light gathering shadows and the mist at the end of a watery meadow where the river begins, where the alpha wolf stands astride the double line of the Yellowknife Highway. He will not move. But mountain silhouettes drift southward past evening, their gleams of caution stalking the night's distance from the Fraser Canyon to the Pacific, past fogs breathing the emptiness of new fields. A long way, and the stars know it, and the first light, the small leaf dawn, the song cool in the lungs. The yellow transparent apple tree. Those of us who grew up in the Fraser Valley are undoubtedly familiar with the transparent apple tree. A tree stands under a patch of sky that overlooks our lives. Unlike the eternal orchards of the Louvre, their apples hand-shaped perfectly by dream sparks in the garden's green, smooth as Eve's full breasts. The summer I learned to read, Father photographed our apple tree, twice as tall as I in my sailor suit. You can't see the sheen of the oozing fracture at the first branch, but you can see the bole's thinness and the small shade on the boy's bare feet before he steps out of the picture to go inside the blue and white house, to open the case of a quarter-size violin on his father's bottom shelf and practice open strings and simple scales. The old newspaper lining the shelf distracting him, headline bleeding black, and a havoc of smaller words. Some of them are real to him. 600 sailors lost. Above a ship darkened by water, the boy sees a hull cut into equal halves and sailors rising like apples, the surface gathering them 3 and 4 at a time, the way he held the spindly tree's first-year apples against his chest, carried them up the steps onto the porch, laid them out on the table until there were no more. I'm walking with my son, a head taller than I, into evening, between sun and house, past apple cressons drying on cotton white racks to where fragrance of ripe apples clings to the air. A slight touch of the boot against a large apple split full length, the flesh swollen white in the crush of shadow and grass, and all around a litter of golden apples bruised by small, sharp moments of light.